Well, as we are working through the middle of the month of April, of course, spring planting really picking up last week across many areas of the country. However, as we work through the weekend into the beginning of this week, saw a little bit of snow in some parts of the upper Midwest. Here to talk about that and more as we take a look at the weather forecast for the week ahead. Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien is with us. And Eric, we were chatting a little bit before we jumped on the air. I'm seeing pictures from friends and family in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota, Wisconsin. They got a bunch of snow over the weekend. What happened there, and what kind of impact is that going to have on spring planting season right now, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the temperatures last week average 20 degrees above normal in some places. And then we had a front that swept through that dropped temperatures 40 degrees. I mean, in a 24-hour time period, 40 to 45-degree swing in temperature. And as we were kind of worried about all week, this low that curled up over the upper Midwest, we thought it could deepen and really deliver some colder air. And it's just what it did. It's always hard to forecast snow in April. So we just were like, okay, it could happen. It could happen. And then we get into the weekend and there it goes. And so Minnesota and Iowa, northern Iowa, but then Wisconsin hammered some places, saw a foot of snow. And it's still snowing there today, Monday, and it's going to be slowly moving over the Great Lakes. And while you're warm there in DC and 65, I'm in Champaign, and we just finally got above 40 degrees today. And right here on Saturday, we were in the 80s. On the Friday before that, we were deep into the 80s. I mean, so a lot of people are like mad at me about it. I'm like, hey, I didn't want this either. I want to keep the windows open because you talk about windows. I just as a thought here, last Wednesday I had to drive up to Wisconsin, and on my way up, I in the 2 hours before sunset from Champaign, Illinois to Bloomington, Illinois to LaSalle, Illinois. I mean, that's only about an hour and a half drive, or maybe 2 hours. I counted 30 planters rolling. And now we've got cold rain over those fields. I mean, the rain was good, but now the temperatures knocked the soil temps back. And some of them saw some snowflakes over the weekend. So, I mean, the seed's going to sit in the ground, and we are going to see temperatures try to rebound, but we're not out of a frost threat again as we go forward here. So we still have another chance for a frosty temperature this week.
So, is there some worry for folks who have put seed in the ground in some of these areas throughout the northern-ish corn belt? Is there some worry here with some of this early planting, with just the way the weather is kind of just pulled back on us a little bit here, Eric?
Yeah, it's just going to take a lot longer to hit 120 GDDs now. And to be honest with you, Jesse, 10 years ago, I would have been really worried, but so much has changed in seed technology, the way
Hmm.
we prepare the seed bed. Um, it's one of those things where I bet we'll end up being surprised, like, oh, you know what? It did okay. It's not ideal. And I have a feeling a lot of folks are out there rolling with beans, which we know can sit in a little bit longer. But I don't know. We had some folks that planted corn early, and there might be some replant, but that's common. We do that every year. But if you don't, it pays off huge. So we're sitting in this position, just kind of waiting to see what these temperatures look like. And unfortunately, from now through the end of April, most of the way through the end of April, we have brief warm-ups that are happening throughout the primary corn and soybean belt, like later this week. I mean, 40 today, but I'm expecting 70s in the middle of the week here before the weekend returns all the colder air. Where I don't see the warmer air really making it is into the northern plains and the upper
Hmm.
Midwest. They're just still going to, unfortunately, be pushed into May before they get to go.
Some other areas over the weekend into this week, looking at that planting progress, and I know we'll be waiting to see the latest planting progress report Monday afternoon. But I think south of I-80, you get a little bit farther south, Missouri, parts of the mid South, maybe even parts of Nebraska, down towards some of those areas farther south from there. Have to think there was some good planting progress made this last week, Eric.
Oh, yeah. I could see the dust from those planters on satellite. So I know that they were out
Hmm.
rolling because all of a sudden we get this haze that shows up in the satellite data. And that's good. I mean, go out there and be aggressive in those states. Just remember, we still have some colder air that's coming through there that is and can happen in late April. But remember, we can always blow the doors wide open at some point in May. And typically, I mean, you know how it goes, right? People often say, well, what happened to spring? Well, that's what Mother Nature does sometimes, just a reversal of a pattern. And now we're back into being able to use all that high sun angle, long duration sun, and the temps climb. So we'll watch for that.
Real quick update maybe on parts of that hard red wheat belt, Kansas down through the Panhandle and more. I know we continue to struggle with drought. I'm hearing a lot of talk about abandonment there. Any update to just what you've seen weather-wise there? It's been so long, I think, since we've seen measurable rains in many parts of that hard red winter wheat belt, Eric.
What I'll be interested to see is right down the center line of Kansas, because this weekend there were storms in eastern half of Kansas and rain. Decent rains came through there, but you could almost put a line right there in central Kansas. You go west of it, and it just didn't. There was just nothing. Um, Western Oklahoma, northwestern Texas, eastern Colorado, west or eastern New Mexico. Over the last, I mean, it's not just 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. There are places out there, some of which have not measured more than a half inch of precip in 200 days. I'm talking you all the way back to last July, before the last time we saw decent moisture out there. So yeah, I get it. This is, and it feels kind of cruel to say, like, there are some places where we're trying to stop. We just stop with the precip. Other places we just desperately needed, and that's a harder winter wheat belt.
Well, looking ahead, summer outlook. I know we've been watching some of the long range forecast models. What's the latest you're seeing there as we continue through the growing season, Eric?
Yeah, so if we just think like May, June, July, or even June, July, August, the biggest thing right now is that there are no long range weather forecast models, none of the most popular ones that I use every day, that are suggesting that we're looking at widespread expansive drought redeveloping in the Midwest or the Northern Plains or the Eastern Corn Belt or even down in the South. Um, None of them are showing it. And you say, well, why? Well, every one of these models is aggressive on redeveloping El Nino. In fact, the CPC on Friday just updated their forecast for June, July, August, and have now given it a 75% chance of having El Nino conditions. And you say, all right, what does that mean? It typically means that in summer in the Midwest, the flow in the jet stream comes out of the Northwest. That tends to limit the duration of heat episodes. What we can't stand are the ones that are 10 to 20 days long. We can handle 5 days of heat, even 7 days of heat, even if it's in July during pollination. It's just you can't have it last beyond that to 2 critical stages of the crop. We're just not seeing that. And we actually see more juice getting pumped up from the Gulf of Mexico and bigger storms. The risk, honestly, is west, and that would be for heat there. But can I give you a caveat? There's still cold water off the West Coast. The faster that fades, the better the chances are that the forecast I just gave you comes into fruition. So that'll be what I'm watching here over the next few weeks.
Eric, as well, before we wrap it up today, South America, any updates there, especially as we watch that safrinha corn crop in Brazil?
Yeah, I think the safrinha corn crop in Brazil is going to be huge. Maybe a little late just because it was planted a little bit late, and then there's been a lot of rain, which means that crop will just stay green longer. But you look at where they are in the position of what the monsoon should be doing. It should be winding down at the beginning of May. Right now, though, plenty of precip. The only dry spot in Brazil big dry spot in Brazil I can tell you about is Rio Grande do Sul. That's the southernmost state in all of Brazil. It's north of Uruguay. Those 2 places are quite dry. So is the Paraná River Basin, which kind of curls around both of those places. And we continue to see Argentina struggle with drought, and that's not changing. And then this morning, there was actually a frost that was trying to creep up, maybe touching the southernmost growing areas in Argentina. I don't think this will be newsworthy, but it just shows you that they're still dealing with highly variable weather conditions in Argentina, which have put a lot of stress and strain on the crop.
Well, as always, we appreciate the insight and the time here on the program. With that, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien, thanks so much, sir. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. You do the same.